Hey, everybody, it's Medium Brandon Ross, and I'm coming to you today because, well, the Catholic Church has a new pope. And this has happened me, let's see, 4 times now in my lifetime. We've had a series of popes that are now, that have kind of led up to where we're at today. And each one of them has faced certain challenges, whether it be internal within the church, or if it was the idea that maybe it needed to expand, if it needed to set a new tone. And this current pope, his layman name being Robert Francis Prevost, started out in Chicago. He was born in Chicago, Illinois. And this being the first U.S. pope ever named is significant for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which to kind of fight the political turmoil that is here in the United States. But there could be something bigger to this. I want to give you a little bit of a rundown of the review of the type of things that astrologers and mediums and those that work with the energy and that are true truth seekers pay attention to when new things like this come about. We pay attention to things like the numerology, the astrology, the history, and of course, we'll take a peek at Nostradamus as well. He actually has a very interesting take, not necessarily about this particular pope, but it lays out in the quatrain to the name. I'll explain it when I get there. So you're going to want to tune in. You're going to want to like and subscribe. Go to my website, tbrandonross.com, sign up for the email list. And before we even get there, I'm going to tell you to keep going. So without further ado, wackadoo, everybody. Look at this good-looking son of a gun. I mean, if you told me that we were going to turn around and be like, hey, who's a good pope? I don't know, Bob from Chicago. Well, here he is, everybody. Here is Robert. And by the way, he has committed his life to a monastic lifestyle. Out of 8th grade, he actually went away to a seminarian school. He has been studying to be the Pope since he was 12 years old, everyone. That is a life of monastic commitment. That is a life of putting yourself and putting your virtues forward. It's interesting that as a Virgo, and his birthday, and we will get to his chart here, he is not only a Virgo moon, but he is a Virgo sun. That has significance, especially when it comes to the fact of the day that he has been nominated. When he made his announcement here, the first thing he said to everyone is, "Peace be with you." That is significant for a whole host of reasons. Now, in the initial conclave that occurred the day before, black smoke came out. I do believe, though, that his announcement, his nomination, election to become the next pope was 100% not only astrological, but it was on purpose to send a clear message to what this pope is intending. Now, if you follow any of the other videos that I've done, I talked a lot about St. Malachi. St. Malachi is pretty bleak. That this final pope is the one that is not necessarily consecrated, but rather desecrated. They were believed to have him be the Roman pope. Now, is the Catholic Church making decisions based on that to be able to say things like, well, we're going to do the exact opposite? Possibly. Well, because we are human. But on the flip side of that, when you start to peel back the layers of who this new pope is, and choosing the name Pope Leo XIV is incredibly significant and a call to arms and action for all Catholics. This was a very purposeful placement. This is a very purposeful installation. Not only has he been built and learned the ways of the church, he also did the missionary work. Father Prevost, not only started out in Chicago, but then he also took seminary. After seminary, rather, he took missionary for 14 years. I believe it's 13, 14 years in Peru. Now, why is that significant? I'm going to share a little bit of a story about things on my own path right now. I actually met a wonderful man, and his name was Francis. And he became a teacher very quickly to me, and he didn't stay on this earth for very long. But in consuming his books and understanding how God and how his approach to connection of God was through dreams and through understanding how history was going to reboil and come forward and truth was going to be revealed. He taught me in a very short amount of time that you needed to be very well versed in the world. He was actually trying to teach me Greek when he passed, which good luck on that. You could say that I might have been his demise, but we won't get into that. Did I mention that Francis was a retired priest? By the way, did I tell you that he had worked at the Vatican and then took his missionary assignment in Peru? Very similar to the current Pope. The things that I learned from him, from my teacher Francis, was that he was able to conduct himself in a way as if he knew, as if he had knowledge. While in Peru, my teacher Francis became a shaman. There's no evidence that Pope Leo worked with shamans, but there is evidence that he worked with the people. He understood the culture. He understood the sociological impact that the church had. Now, he was stationed in the north of Peru, probably about 15 hours north of Lima. But it's significant to me that Pope Leo actually did work all along the shaman line. Are you not familiar with the shaman line? Let me give you a little bit of education here. The shaman line is a ley line that starts at Mount Shasta and goes down to Lake Titicaca. It runs through Machu Picchu. It runs through Sedona. It is full of sacred spaces, and understanding that in that line there is an energetic force of learning and knowledge. That is why within a few kilometers you have Easter Island. That is why you have the ruins of the Nacha Plains and the understanding of the Southwest and North American tribal societies through Arizona, New Mexico, and of course California. Paying attention to who I'm calling him a saint already, but Pope Leo is to understand that he's been on a journey. I firmly believe and hold in high regard anyone that goes outside of their comfort zone to do the work that they are meant to do. He is multilingual, speaking over 5 languages. When I say over 5 languages, there is evidence that he has a strong understanding of other cultural impact studies that were derivatives of Inca and Mayan in the area as well. So this dude is absolutely educated. I don't want to use the word groomed because we're talking Catholics here, but I do want to say that he is without a doubt someone that has committed his life. When he was a child in Chicago, he actually told everyone he was going to be the first United States Pope. He had a neighbor later say, "That was my dream. I hope I see it." So let's take a look at the numerology here for a second. Again, numerology is the belief system that numbers are going to have representation and energy towards a common goal. It'll be messages that'll be connected to whatever it is the circumstances are. First of all, the date. The date ends up being a 4. The 4 symbolism of the day is the idea that there is a foundation. It is in servitude. It also represents the 6th house, which we're going to get to here in a second as well. But then it's also about happiness. As a derivative of 13 in the reduction here, this is about a new direction. It's about a new location or a mindset. 13 actually translates to the 13th card of the tarot as well. Guess what? That's the death card. It's the ultimate change. It's the change of the transmutation of the self, and it's the release of the ego so that then you can have everything from the metaphoric ego death to the transformative death. This is a significant change. They did not happen upon this day by accident. Now, being the 267th Pope, this is a 6. This is also a new beginning, which is their ability to kind of say like, hey, listen, or at least in the succession of the popes, this is the one that's allowing them to say like, hey, listen, we needed a change person in the last one, which I believe we had in Pope Francis. And now with Pope Leo, we are going in a new direction. We're going to garner and foster new things in many different ways. And of course, Leo the 14th, which 1 + 4 is 5, and that is equal the old administration of the term change. It's that simple, everybody. Don't overthink this stuff. Just go with the flow. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the eighth day here altogether. Moving ahead too much. May 8th is the Catholic feast of the apparition of Saint Michael the Archangel. Archangel Michael, the defender of the faith. Archangel Michael is also the one that shows up when you have made not so great choices, but you're not supposed to go yet. Now, if Raziel shows up, not such a good sign, because he's here to kind of be like, hey, I'm going to whip some knowledge on you. If Azrael shows up, he's like, nah, I'm here to take you home, wherever that home is. But when Archangel Michael shows up, you are protected. He is a guardian of the faith and the right things happening. He is the only one that can actually interpret the will of God and apply it. Whether it be a fiery sword or a vindication, Archangel Michael was designed by faith to be that of hope. Let's go on some more here. It is his protective role and the importance of the faith in overcoming challenges. By the way, Archangel Michael is the patron saint of police and protection and military. Archangel Michael is also the patron saint of addiction recovery, also near-death experiences. Archangel Michael is responsible for putting you back in your body when you think you're all done. Archangel Michael is also very significant here because this is calling on Archangel Michael's energy to change what we're seeing right now. And maybe this is changing the course of where humanity has been going. But let's stop there, because the date also is very significant in Buddhism. It is the Buddha Siddhartha Gautama. This is the original Buddha, the origin story, if you will, of the Buddhist religion. Born a prince, by the way, at about 635 BCE. He was born a prince, and he was destined to become king. A soothsayer came to his mother, who actually passed away when he was about 6 or 7 years old, and said, if this boy stays within this castle, he will become a king. However, if he leaves this kingdom and explores every direction, he will then become the spiritual leader the world needs. Buddhism was predicted on that day. So this prince, hope I still got it here. Buddhism was predicted on that day by the soothsayer that said, if he leaves the castle, he will become the spiritual leader the world needs. He was born a prince and then denounced his throne and his kingdom. He then became a spiritual leader by leaving the castle, by leaving what he knew to explore the world. Sound like the current pope yet? He did become that religious leader, and he professed the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths bring you to the understanding of who and how your faith is. We'll talk about that more in a second. He also enlightened the world with the Noble Eightfold Paths. Again, this is about directions, and we'll talk about those. Taught the understanding of suffering as a way of life. In other words, it's part of life. But to be human is to be on a quest to understand suffering, not necessarily becoming suffering. What he was looking to do was to alleviate, or at least understand the human condition, that suffering was actually part of this life. By the way, I think this ties into how Christian belief systems work. We actually have a huge gap in the Bible between the age of 12 and 30. What was Jesus doing during that time? Was he maybe leaving his safe space to go out into the world and find things? Because an awful lot of Christianity, and Catholicism in particular, sounds a lot like Buddhism in the New Testament. That's why I'm tying this in here, but let's not stop there. Let's take a look at those truths here. And look at me go. I'm covering up half of the thing. So the Four Noble Truths are the truth, the cause, the cure, the path. This allows us to understand where we are in the cycle. And by the way, 4 steps is a natural cause of effect. In other words, you have to start somewhere. You have to have an idea. You have to go somewhere and try and go there. And then you have to have a maturity level. And then you have a perfection level. So that is understanding the truth, the cause, the cure, and the path. We can do an entire other video just on these 4. And by the way, you'll see shades of this in, say, the 4 agreements. There is a certain element that have been lifted for the 4 agreements there. My regards, Don Miguel. However, with the Eight Noble Paths, with the Eight Noble Paths, rather, Eightfold Path is wholesale then lifted and moved into the Beatitudes, the 8 ways of living. This is about understanding, having the right understanding, having the right thought, having the right speech, having the right actions, understanding how your life is meant to go, to be thoughtful, to be mindful, to be conscious of those things that you need to do in order to follow a path. You'll also notice that it's kind of looks like, one of those ship wheels there, but it actually represents the directions of the earth, all of the ways that you're supposed to go. You're supposed to spend time to learn each one of these and master each 8 of these, each one of the 8 of them. Reason being is because that is the atonement. That is understanding enlightenment. That is understanding the human condition. How does that tie into today? Think about it. If Buddhism is tied into Christianity, Catholicism in particular, and they chose this feast day for the origin of this, isn't this about getting back to basics? Well, please hold. I have more. Let's take a look at, say, a 1555 soothsayer, Nostradamus, one of our old friends here. I'm taking this particular quatrain, not because I think it predicts anything yet, but please hold. Let's analyze this for a second. The reason why I chose this is Leo is the 5th astrological sign. It also represents the 5th house in astrology. If you take that and then translate it into Pope Leo XIV, I want to point something out to you. We're going to take the 5th century Leo and quatrain 14, Leo XIV, and take a look at this. Because let me tell you something. He, Nostradamus, has been riddled with kind of speculation about being right, wrong, and all this other stuff, and being tied to the Saint Malachi prophecies. Well, I also think that he did his work the way he was meant to see his work. He didn't really understand what he was seeing most of the time. So the way he would write it is very consequential. So Saturn and Mars in Leo, we're going to talk about that. Don't you worry. We're going to look at that. Spain captive. Down by the cock. That's France, everybody. Get your head out of the gutter. We're talking about Catholics here. So just to kind of give you a little bit of spin of analysis here, they're talking about Saturn and Mars in Leo. Well, right now, Mars is in Leo. Saturn, however, is not. Moving back into Pisces, trying to do a little bit of crazy here, right? But Spain captive, didn't we just have a giant power outage just a few days before the conclave? Just pointing it out. By the African chief trapped in conflict, who could this be? Now, the African continent, and again, this is another one of those things that we can go down a giant rabbit hole. I want you to be aware that what this is doing is signifying that maybe this is a time of conflict. Maybe this is a time of rhetoric. Maybe this is a time of relief, because this next line is the part that really gives it to you. Understanding that an African leader being trapped isn't something that's necessarily in the headlines right now. However, having things be manipulated on the regular, both by the US government and by countries around the world, trying to figure out where their land stake is and trying to find peace, I actually think that this might be a call to the Coptic Bible that originates in Ethiopia. I think what this is a call to understanding that the Ethiopian Christian way of life, which was the predecessor of a lot of what Catholicism evolved into, is called a true faith source, because a lot of the natural true texts actually were housed in Ethiopia. Some of them were even written in Ethiopia. Keep that in mind as we go along. So maybe this is a call to the text. Near Malta, again, hi Penny. Herod taken alive. Well, There's a belief system that when he kind of like misspells things, he's kind of sort of talking about the actual leaders. He's trying to kind of cover it up without being literal. And if you know anything about Herod, Herod was somebody that actually tried to reestablish an aristocracy. He was trying to actually blend things and blur the lines of society. Herod was actually held accountable. He was trying to actually make a class system that would perpetuate the rich and put the thumb on the poor. Maybe Herod in this phrasing taken alive, but then it says the Roman scepter will be struck down by France. Maybe what this has to say is that maybe France will be a key component to this. And again, there is a source of, say, recency bias or locational bias when it comes to Nostradamus. He seems to put France in the middle of it. But the fact that he called France the cock in this, I can't believe I'm making this video. Please don't block me out here. He's talking about the new day. Where what it's doing is announcing the new age of Christianity. Maybe what this is announcing that the realization or all of the facts are being left out on the table. And the Roman scepter will be struck down by the calling of the truth. I'm going to stick my reputation on those words. By the way, let's not forget tarot. Another French invention, if we will. The Three of Pentacles. And by the way, in reverse, of course, has its own meaning, but upright, it is about agreement, planning, teamwork, a contract, a private fulfillment. Now, what does this tarot card have to do? Well, this is May 8th. This is during the week between May 1st and May 9th, May 10th. This is actually kind of projecting the fact that there's kind of, it's kind of got a conclave field about it. Like, hey, we're going to agree with this behind the scenes, but we're all going to be in agreement. And we are all going to have a private fulfillment of our duties, our honor, and our value system. So let's talk a little bit about Robert Prevost, the human. This is a look at his chart. And I know that some of you are kind of like, Brandon, I can't see it. Please hang on because I've got more slides. Now, we don't know his time of birth, but knowing that he's born in Chicago, Illinois, we can't necessarily go by the house system here. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that house, but this is representing that he'd be a Sagittarius rising, but we don't know that for certain. But I want to go on to the next slide, which, by the way, I hope I've kind of sort of helped you here with. Without me, please hold. There we go. So the Virgo placements. The Virgo placements here, and actually I'm going to change this just a little bit here. Move me right here. There we go. Hope you enjoy, everybody. The Virgo placements here are that Venus and the Sun are conjunct. Mars, the Moon, and Vesta are all pretty wide in their conjunction. Now, Vesta is not traditionally considered a conjunction situation, although it is here. The true representation of this with what this stellium looks like here. And stellium is when you just pack all of the planets in one, 4 or more. And this is about foundation, truth, and a fierce arbiter for learning and being virtuous, reliable, and authentic. Now, if we did have the gift of the 9th house, we'd be talking about knowledge. But in this case here, I at least want to talk about that combo platter of the Virgo signs here, or the Virgo placements, really create a foundation. This is somebody who is based in foundation. By the way, today is a 4 foundation. There's something to this, whether it be clandestine that this Pope be named, or if he was being readied for it his entire life. Now let's talk about the Leo placements. This is the one that I think you should really, really get excited about if you're a Catholic. Leo placements are Pluto conjunct to Jupiter. Now, what does that mean on the outset? Well, in Leo, this is about rebirth, optimism, hope, renewal, and vision. Because they are, and actually they are a wide conjunct, but they are still conjunct here. Pluto is going to empower the expansiveness of Jupiter, and Jupiter is going to expand the power of Pluto. This is kind of a combination platter that makes a person potent. Now, Leo can be aggressive, but with these other Virgo placements, he is approaching this in terms of servitude. This is the thing that we have to keep in mind throughout this papacy. This is going to be a man that is virtued in basis, has put in the work, is a workhorse, and more importantly, and by the way, having a Mars in Virgo, I mean, you're an Earth sign Mars, you are a workaholic. You are going to look to make it happen for you. You are going to drill down that fact until it gets to the truth. And again, having the Pluto conjunct to Jupiter here is really, truly a power sign. Also, I'm going to throw this in here as well. Having Uranus be in Leo as well is a signifier that change is and again, we're talking about a fixed sign. There's a certain level of destiny here where his Leo, being a fixed energy name, is that he is going to say, you know what? We're going to forge ahead in a new direction. And just as a breakdown to understand the idea of mutable, fixed, and cardinal signs, the mutable signs, which is strong in his chart in Virgo, are all about adapting all of the challenges that are there. I'll start from the top for those that don't understand. When you have fixed signs come in and say, you know what, we have to make it this way it's always been, we got to make it work, right? They're the ones that are kind of trying to culminate and say, but this is the way we were. Now, the cardinal signs are the ones that come in and say, you know what, we have to come up with a new way. We have to kind of find another way to do this. Like whatever that old way is, it doesn't work. And then you have the mutable energies that come in and kind of clean it up. Having so many placements in a mutable sign is tremendous for him because it's an asset that he's able to adapt. He's able to take the old and the new and merge them together. Now, let's talk about the actual day here of his election. And again, this one I think you guys are going to really like. Now, it is in a rising of Libra, given the time. And by the way, I went with 5:30. That is when they set the smoke out there. The white smoke comes out. That is when they announced it. So we're going to use that as the time. And take a look at the stellium that's happening here in the 6th house. And really, it's the right side of the chart. Yes, you have the moon in Libra, which is also important to the Libra rising. This gives passion and emotion to the presentation that's going to be out there. In other words, the church has kind of not always been political, but it has always been even in its approach. And by the way, Pope Leo in his monastic life has been known as kind of a left of center in terms of his progression. He wants to be progressive, but he holds true some of the older traditions within the church. In other words, women shouldn't probably get ready to be, priests quite yet. However, it will be open and loving. As a matter of fact, he proved this when he talked about some of his tweets. I'm going to save that for the end. But let's take a closer look here. I hope you guys can appreciate that I'm kind of making this a little bit bigger so that we can see it okay. Now, in the 8th house here, you have Uranus and the sun in conjunct here in Taurus. What this means is that this is liberation, freedom, change, chaos, and unpredictable in personal growth. In other words, you're going to challenge yourself to do things that you didn't think you could do before. This placement of the day of his announcement is significant because what they're saying is, oh, we're going to be different. We are not going to toe the line the old way. We're not going to be passive. Maybe this is about standing up to the aggressions in the world right now, the wrongs of the world, the things that they're vocal about. Now, Mercury conjunct to Chiron, this is significant because it's happening in the 7th house. And 7th house is about relationships. The Catholic Church has recognized that the relationships not only with their own constituents, but also with their entire with the conclave down to the cardinals, the popes, all of or popes, bishops. Sorry, I'm making it sound like we're playing chess here, but recognizing that everyone has kind of been felt left out in some way or another. This placement astrologically actually speaks a lot about the reparation of relationships, of healing of relationships. Like, hey, I didn't mean to do that. I am sorry. Not that the Catholic Church is going to come out and say, oh gosh, we're going to come clean with everything. They're recognizing and going to be mindful moving forward that the change is coming, that they have to be cognizant about the relationships of healing and their obligation to its constituents. Now, the stellium here that is happening in the sixth house is ridiculously significant because you have Venus and Neptune in Aries conjunct just 4 degrees apart. And then you have Saturn and the North Node also conjunct. Now, Saturn and Neptune are also conjunct, which is why there's a lot of, hey, new stuff happening, kind of dreamy, illusionist type feel to it. But the 4 of them together sitting in the 6th house, and by the way, the 6th house is the house of duty. It is the house of routine. It is the Virgo house. Huh? Who's a Virgo here? Oh yeah, him. And by the way, this is about the attention to the routines. This is a reinvigoration of values. Venus holds the value card here. Neptune holds the disillusion part of it, the idea that we can actually give people their faith back. Saturn is about the stability, right? The hopefulness coming into this. Now, the ultimate destiny in changing what was to a vision of compromise without losing foundation. This is incredibly significant. There was a lot of discussion about how quickly this conclave moved. I think, even when Pope Francis was named, I think it was in 4 days. I think they had a couple of days where there was a lot of uncertainty. And we're going to talk a little bit about Pope Francis's influence here as well. But astrologically speaking, these placements are truly about the dynamic of facing the challenges that you have and setting the tone of value, looking at what your foundation is. It was done on a 4-day. The person that they brought in has strong placements for virtue and getting back to basics, right? This is incredibly significant because if you really follow the history of the Catholic Church, don't worry about Malachi's prophecies. Don't worry about the Our Lady of Fatima's predictions. Worry more about the things that they have control of. They're setting forth that they want to be about change, they want to be about virtue, and they want to be about the people. Huh? Now, why do you choose somebody that might be kind of sort of left of center? You got to keep it together here. Pope Francis was a good person. I read people for a living, and I'm here to tell you that he was the real deal and he was genuine. There has already been rumors that Pope Francis pulled the conclave together and basically said, this is my choice because he has been virtuous and he has done everything that we have asked. He received special appointments. As a matter of fact, Robert Francis Prevost, Father Prevost, was responsible for elevating bishops to cardinals. He was the one that led the education of those cardinals to understand how to better find themselves and to be human and to translate that into leadership. He taught conscious leadership in the Catholic Church. Pope Francis recognized that and realized what the next level, or at least the parts that he didn't get to here. Then Father Prevost, Cardinal Prevost, I keep saying that, also has been outspoken. As the Archbishop of Chicago, he had no problem taking aim at J.D. Vance and some of his falsehoods. Make no mistake, the Catholic Church naming a U.S. Pope, the first ever, is significant for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which he had the gumption to calmly explain to J.D. Vance when he explained what the priorities were for the country. Quote, Jesus never taught how to prioritize kindness and love. That is when this man became a folk hero, and likely the reason why the Catholic Church wanted to send a message to not only the United States, but also to the world, that we will not be uncompromised. We will not be compromised to the belief system that we hold true, the teachings of Jesus, the understanding of God in our life, the understanding of being a good person. We will not compromise that because of political expediency. We will not do that because of populist movements. We will do that because kindness is kind. And by the way, kind people are my kind of people. What's interesting about this, and what gave me pause and enlightenment all at the same time, was I realized somewhere through the day when I was preparing this that about 8 months ago, 7, 8 months ago, I channeled this meditation called Brother Leo. I encourage you to take a look at it on my YouTube channel. And I'll leave the link below and all that other stuff. But I basically predicted this because I talked about how making me a channel of this peace, if I'm worth my salt, I'm going to tell you that the energy that I was tapping into was understanding that the baton, just like this handshake, was handing off the work that was being done. And for a change, the Catholic Church has leadership that understands one another and appreciates the differences, but strives to still be perfect in an imperfect world. One of the things that I talked about in this poem was understanding that Leo had to take on the burden and reveal the truth about things. Pope Francis reminded him to be kind while doing it. Be firm, be true, have strength, be aggressive, but not hurtful. This is Francis shaking Leo's hand, saying, I want to make you a channel of my peace. That's all I'm going to say here, everybody. I want to give you guys the heart taps. I want to remind one another that we love and care for each other, and remind one another to simply keep going. Be curious, have faith, explore the things that make you sing. Be creative, be abundant, be fruitful in your thoughts, help one another in all the work that you're meant to do. And during this time of transition, I have realized where my faith needs to be. It's not necessarily a label, but it's an action. And when you fall short of things, promise yourself you'll try to do better. When you hurt somebody, say, I'm sorry. When you help somebody, expect nothing in return. When you value the world around us and the humans that you are blessed to know that that's the interaction that any faith or religion truly should embody. It's not about being scared of what's on the other side. It's not being scared into being a good human. It is quite literally those interactions in your pursuit to become a better you every single day, because your soul is what we'll remember, and the people around you will appreciate you for your growth, for your kindness, and for your own vision. So heart taps to all of you. And again, I want to remind you all to simply keep going. Oh, by the way, Brandon's my middle name. I often get things by middle name. Sorry, did you say Francis? Did I just tell you I have a teacher named Francis? The defense rests, Your Honor. Thank you so much for being part of my journey. Be sure to like and subscribe, and see you soon. Keep going.